It's spring week 9 here in Apothecaria, and during this cure episode, we find out a little bit more about Mouse Eye's deal with the noble elf and trading a tail for a tale. Hey there everyone, welcome to Drawing Expressions. I'm Parz, and we are, in week 9 now of the Apothecaria writing. And boy, it's been a ride so far. We've got a little ways to go yet, but we are closing in on the ending. And we're gonna talk about that. We're actually gonna talk about a lot of stuff. But before we talk about anything, we're gonna first talk about guidelines. Guidelines are always there. They will always take care of you. Rules, guidelines. Guidelines is where it's at. In the planner section today, we're doing the same planner as we always do. It's the Creative Mixing Bowl. And we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about the Creative Mixing Bowl, in fact. And in the Pantser section, it's going to be, I've officially titled it Getting into the Story's Flow. And part of that's going to be about the Creative Mixing Bowl. So more about all of that later. For right now, let's just start with some breathing and stretching. So we're going to sit up nice and tall. Sit bones are sitted nicely. And we're going to take a nice deep breath in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Deep breath in. And stretch. There we go. Okay, with that lovely little stretch, I think I'm ready to dive into the story today. I think it's a little bit longer. Just be aware, might be a little bit longer. So if you're not ready with a bit of a beverage, adult or not, you might want to go grab one. And and then just sit back and listen as the story unfolds. Here we go. I don't normally leave an entry on a cliffhanger, but I did in my last one. And at the time, I did wonder what the night would bring. It had already been a day full of learning new things, seeing new places, being chased by an entirely new, to me anyway, creature. So no wonder if I wondered what else would happen or be revealed. And to be fair, a couple of things were revealed after that last entry, and something that had happened that I didn't squeeze into my journal last time. Mouse Eye told me about the nature of flying brooms, especially the old ones. The newer ones are made for anyone to fly. They're quite generic. But the old ones, they were built in a way that, if you didn't resonate with it, it'd present as a perfectly ordinary broom, or at least as a nothing particularly special flying broom. How awesome is it that this old broom, Vapor Trail, did resonate with me? Speaking of the broom and Pop, throughout the night, Pop, the one attached to Vapor Trail, continued to divide and flow and morph. It was like watching festive lights multiply and grow all over a tree. The handle now glows very gently, with all of its twisted, knotty, mottled glory. The entirety of her bristles now also glow amber, and there are definitely far more light bristles than there were original ones. The overall result is just completely magical. I have to share with Pip. Maybe this is a way to keep Pop Olak safe in whatever dimensions they exist. However, reality also came knocking and reminded me that, while flying fast and high in the open sun can be fun, it's also a source of skin burn. Sunburn, windburn. Oof, my skin wasn't happy. It took a couple of days for a lovely brown tan to develop. The color is reminiscent of smooth tree bark. During the couple of days that I took it easy, waiting for my skin to recover, Mouse Eye gave me a note from Pip. I grinned when I saw it, then grimaced when my cheeks pushed their burned selves up, then groaned when the grimace creased those same burnt areas. Note to self, I need a salve for this. But back to the note. I read it and I learned something new. My dearest, bestest friend, Sweet. Your world sounds like a scary place. I can't imagine living through all of the adventures you've shared with me. You are so brave. Sweet the brave. My life is much quieter than yours, thankfully, but your life sounds more like an adventure book. Mine would be more of a how to avoid. I'm more of a hide and run than hide and seek person. Smiley face. I'm happy to hear Pop is doing so well. She's extinct in most dimensions of the here yet not here. I'm hoping ours survive, thrive, and breed. How did you learn to write poetry? I love reading yours. Mouseye has been visiting often. She does love chocolate chunky chip cookies, especially fresh from my oven. Laugh out loud. I'm sending some for you too. If none arrive, you know who swiped them. Laugh out loud. Love, your best bestie, Pip. And that's the end of the note. Pip called me adventurous. Me. I had to laugh. No, Pip, I'm not adventurous, but they do seem to find me regardless. And she said she likes my poetry. Well, I'll have to write one. I just need to think what about. Or maybe I can write one about how Mouseye seems to have developed a keen interest in chocolate chunky chip cookies. Apparently Pip sent them with this letter, but they didn't arrive. Or they did, but I just never got them. When I read the bit about the cookies, I looked over the letter at where Mouseye was sitting, looking all cute and innocent. But I think he felt my glare because he opened his eyes, gave a weak smile, belched a chocolate-laden burp, patted his tummy, then closed his eyes again. Little scamp! Cookie thief! Ah, to heck with it. I can't stay mad at him for long, but I did say I'd appreciate at least one cookie next time. He made a sound back that could have been agreement, or a light snore, or perhaps even something less polite. I do remember seeing him eating a cookie in Pip's pocket while I dreamed that night after being under the effects of the mushroom spores. I wonder just how much of that experience was real. I'm guessing more of it than I'd guessed. Anyway, I was finally feeling good again after recovering from my burn, ready to take on the day, whatever it might bring, embrace the fullness of somebody's coming down the path. The fullness of time to breathe, time to relax, time to trust in myself, whatever may happen. Embrace the fullness of the spirit of the cottage and grounds and knock, knock. Hello, Mistress Sweetwater. I opened my eyes when I recognized the voice. Cornelius McTwitter, the physician of High Rannoch, here. Mistress? But there was something wrong with his voice. It was like he was talking around something. I opened the door as he was starting to turn away. Ah, good, mistress. I'm so glad you're in. Doctor, I responded politely. Ish. I mean, he wants to kick me out of my cottage and turn the grounds into some sort of health resort, whatever that is. Can I come in? And then he smiled, revealing a broken tooth. I stepped out of the way and indicated a seat. How did your tooth end up broken? He gave a wan smile. There's quite the thing happening in town. Have you heard? Are you referring to the supposed relationship between myself and the mayor? Not exactly that, but that is part of it. High Rannoch is abuzz with the rumored affair, some defending you, some attacking, and many just listening raptly, soaking up the, and pardon me for saying, entertainment value. Bob was targeted by some people for having sold you that magnificent broom you flew out on the other day. Anyway, things were getting pretty animated. People began grabbing and swinging heavy things, and my tooth and I met one of those heavy things on a backswing. I dosed myself with painkillers and am now here hoping you can set my tooth right. I took a look in the book, and there was a recipe for shattered tooth. And I had everything in-house. I did consider, briefly, going out to collect reagents and letting the doctor sit and stew, but instead I decided to make a potion now, and to ask a few questions while I worked. The mayor did mention to me that you are interested in taking the cottage and converting it into some sort of health spot. It was a statement on the surface, but a question at its heart. When I first was here and you treated me, I must admit that my mind couldn't accept that you'd cure me. And so effectively and efficiently, I blame that on my bias against nature-based medicines, which I was taught in my medical school in Imperial City. Treat the humors, not the body, was an oft-repeated asseveration. A what? It was something the instructors would say, but never provide evidence that it was correct. We all learned it as more an article of faith than of science. And then you came here and you showed me just what a fool I was. You brew a potion and almost instantly the patient is cured. I am aware you helped young Robert, our town's adventurer. I'd had the rat spit on a low boil and added it to the vampire venom and slime shell, both raw, and now let it sit and cool. So you don't want to take over here? Goodness no. I say you should provide your kind of care here in your cottage, and I'll provide mine safely behind city walls. So why did the mayor say he wants me out and you in here? The doctor shook his head. I don't know, but I'm not interested in displacing you. I handed over the cup. You'll want to kick this back in one go. Swirl it in your mouth before you swallow. He accepted gratefully and did as I asked. Look, you are part of the medical team, if I may be so bold to say. You provide your services and I provide mine, and that way, high Rannoch citizens can be as healthy as they can be. And then he added, Ooh, it tingles. As he opened his mouth, I could see the tooth regenerating. It's one thing to get rid of someone's bad breath with a potion, but it's something else entirely to see a tooth growing. Literally growing. I have to ask, are you still trying to get an animated skeleton? He grimaced at that one. No, I've learned my lesson. I have an ordinary skeleton, and I point to where I need to direct attention. I figured if you don't need one, neither do I. It should be another few minutes. Try not to rub your tongue over the tooth. This is extraordinary. Had someone come to me with a broken tooth, I'd have been pulling it out and perhaps replacing it with some sort of bone. Elephant, perhaps. I decided to ask one last question before the tooth was fully healed. Any idea who's helping the rumor along? Is the mayor saying drunken things again? Cornelius looked serious this time. That's quite a thought. I hadn't considered that there'd be someone adding fuel to the flame, so to speak. I mean, you know the nature of rumors and how they morph and change, enlarge, I suppose you could say. And that's something I think everyone partakes in. But you're asking about someone being malicious about it. I don't think so. The mayor is saying nothing but looking rather smug. His wife is crying that another woman has led him astray. The teachers and staff are tittering at each other. I just don't know. What was that about the mayor's wife? Oh, apparently the mayor's been accused of straying from the marital bed in the past. Ah. Something didn't feel right, but I wasn't sure what it was. So I decided to let the doctor know how much he owed. 40 silver, because it was a harder potion, and move on with the day. The thought of people getting violent, let alone spreading vicious rumors about me, was uncomfortable. I needed some time away again. Exercise in the bog had been one solution. Retail therapy leading to a trip to the Cloud Isles had been another. Today, I wanted to walk among the trees in Glimmerwood Grove. We, Mouse Eye and I, can spend a day doing it, maybe gathering a thing or two, and maybe, hey, we can visit that elf that Mouse Eye had found the other day. Fun! Mouse Eye, what do you think about a day trip visit to the elf you visited the other day? Fun, right? He just froze and had this look that said so much and none of it good. I kept looking at him. He gave me a weak smile back. Must we? Just out of curiosity, what would cause any concern about visiting the elf? It sounded like he was eager for visitors. Mouse Eyes' face was frozen. Through closed lips, I got a mumbled, non-committal sound. Deep breaths, count to 10, tell myself that someday I'll find the funny in this situation, release. How about this? If we go visit the elf, do you think we'll be welcomed? Another non-committal sound. Okay, great. Well, I'm off. It'd be great if you came along to guide me to the elf rather than have me wander around trying to find him, but if it's going to be, for whatever reason, impractical for you to accompany me, I fully and non-judgmentally understand. If whatever happened between you and the elf is going to be a hindrance to helping guide me there, then it's completely fine that you not come. Because in your telling of the tale, and I am heavily referring to your use of both the words for the long appendage that is part of you and a synonym for a story, you were so amazingly clever that you won the elf's favor. Well, I did. So off I go, and I won't come home until I've met the elf for myself, if for no other reason than to get his side of the story. Mouse Eye just closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then said, I may have, overstated, the elf's appreciation of my verbal trick. I crossed my arms. How overstated? He may refer to me as a cheat and a thief. So he wasn't amused when you, no. That cemented my determination. Great, then we'll head over there and make amends. Must. The I petered off. I think Mouse Eye might have swallowed it. Yes, we must. If nothing else, I want to be a good neighbor. Okay. And that was that. Off we headed. Mouse Eye sat on my shoulder the entire way. The trip was quiet, which suited me just fine. I rehearsed apologies, thought of ways to treat this ancient being that might be appropriate. Having no idea of any customs that he might expect me to know, I wondered if I could fake it well enough, and tried to keep issues that might be brought up in mind so that I wouldn't be speechless at any point. It was a lot to think in a short time. As we got closer to the location of the elf's court, we started to hear a voice, complaining and apparently in some amount of pain. I sped up, wondering what in the world could be wrong. The brambles that had obscured the entrance to the courtyard had been plowed over by something. Certainly something big, and not at all concerned by the prickles of the bushes. I stepped through and a lot more made sense. In the middle of the courtyard lay a sphinx. And not just any sphinx. It was the one I'd encountered a few weeks back. He was bleeding from an open wound in his chest. Kneeling next to him was an elf, speaking softly, tending to him. He glanced up as Mouse Eye and I strode in, then stood up angrily. I have no time to deal with you, thief, but you are not welcome here, and anyone who accompanies you is equally barred. Begone! I glanced at Mouse Eye sternly. He gave me a helpless shrug back. Sir, I'm aware my familiar gave offense earlier, and I'm here hoping to heal the rift from that, but I see someone in need of aid. May I be of service? He looked at me in annoyance, waved us away, and went back to the Sphinx. Feeling bolder than I had any right to feel, I walked up to the two figures, laid my hand on the Sphinx's shoulder, and vowed to return quickly with a healing potion. He thanked me, then said something about never going back, then went back to moaning in pain. I mentally ran through options for a cure and hit on one. Surgeon sap. We needed to find a particular tree, a nurse willow, and given how thirsty willows can be, I headed towards the boundary between the forest and the bog. It took a couple of trees to find the right kind and one that had sap congealing on its bark. I gathered a blob, then returned to the Sphinx. Re-entering the courtyard, I heard the Sphinx breathing easier, although the chest wound was still oozing. The elf was chanting something. He looked up and I held up the sap. He nodded for me to approach. If I'd been at home, I would have heated the sap to allow a portion to be placed like a poultice over the wound. Instead, I just had the Sphinx swallow the sap whole. It's a little bit sweet, so I think that helped it go down. The wound began to heal as we watched, first drying up, then starting to close. The elf stopped his chant. It was something to ease pain, and the Sphinx soon became his healthy self once more. I believe I owe you all an explanation, said the now standing Sphinx. I staggered here from my perch in search of help. You see, I'm a Sphinx, and by tradition we ask a riddle to anyone who approaches. And by tradition you can pass if you get the riddle right, and you are eaten if you get it wrong. Thanks, however, to the generous nature of the witch before me, I learned that other penalties can be applied, such as the teaching of a new riddle, which I welcomed because, like I said before, I'm a vegetarian. Anyway, an adventurer approached earlier today. I posed. He answered incorrectly, but instead of teaching me a new riddle, he mocked me. As I began to scold him for his attitude, he stabbed me. He ran off, and I made my way here, and thanks to you both, I'm right as rain. But I'm never going back to that pedestal. Instead of blocking people from traveling forwards, I'm not sure what. The noble elf looked thoughtful. You may reside here with me. I believe we can trade stories for riddles. What say you? Does a bear poop in the woods? The elf paused. And perhaps we can study various forms of riddles and thereby increase your repertoire. He then looked at me. You, I believe, are Mistress Sweetwater. Your actions were honorable. You are welcome to return here whenever you wish. As for your familiar, I'll consider his debt to me settled once he has told me 2 stories, not tales, over the next week. Mouse-Eye started. I owed you 1. The elf answered, interest and penalties. Mouse-Eye shrugged. Okay, as for the first tale, let's do this properly. We should sit back, enjoy refreshments, and allow this story to be savored properly. I'll say this about what followed. It was an event. Mouse-Eye took center stage and not only told his stories, but acted them out. He did the voices, he brought settings to life, let's just say he brought the house down. Twice. And as for the refreshments the elf provided, I figured we'd have something refreshing to drink or something like that, but what was served was beyond anything I'd ever had before. Maybe it's because I'd never had elvish food, and this bit of refreshment in the elvish world was simply that, but I found it simply amazing. Anyway, whatever bad blood had existed before was now well and done. Elf and mouse complemented each other. I breathed a sigh of relief. The Sphinx trundled off to his new lodgings, and I took that as a cue to excuse myself. All in all, a lovely day. And it remained lovely despite the fact that somewhere in all this I decided Fen needed a friend. A princess toad, to be exact. Why I thought it was a good idea? I don't know. But I did, and so off Mouse-Eye and I went in search of one. We did find princess toads, eventually. There weren't many around, and those we did find, well, you can't simply grab them. You have to ask if they'd like to leave their current situation and come join me in mine. To which they all replied, no, thank you. You can't argue with that. We went home, tired but happy. It had been a busy day. Mouse-Eye settled onto the spirit house, and I was still mentally awake. So I decided to write a response to Pip. I addressed it to Pip, here yet not here, and sent it from Sweet, here yet not here. Dear Pip, thank you for your kind gift of chocolate chunk cookies. I'd like to say they were delicious, that they paired nicely with the tea I was drinking. Perhaps Mouse-Eye, when he next sees you, can tell you that they were, since he's the only one who knows. The little mischief maker didn't even leave a crumb for me. Your cookies may be delightful, and I may be more insightful, were it not for a mouse, who lives in my house, who can apparently eat a plateful. I think it's funny that you think I'm so adventurous. Not true, but they do have a way of finding me. So rather than me being adventurous, I'd say adventures are sweeterous. Pop, by the way, has divided into 2, and one of her is now part of the ancient broom I just bought. It's like a holiday lit broom now. Your best bestie, Sweet. I figured I'd ask my little half-truth-telling cookie-addicted familiar to deliver it in the morning. But no sooner had I sealed up the letter, I heard a snap. I'd heard that sound before during my dream, and the one who'd snapped me then had been a small owl. Name's Birdie. We needed to talk, so here I am. Stay out of my world and I'll stay out of yours. Now give me that note. Good talk. Snap! And she was gone. What the? That was... Wow. Poor Pip. I took a second, more like many minutes, to sit and breathe and find my center again. Then for good measure, I went and gave Mouse Eye a quick peck on the head, and then decided it was time to go to bed. And that is the end of the story. Okay, so after reading that and all the voices, I think it's time for a little breathing and stretching. Please join me. Here we go. Nice deep breath in. And stretch. I think I breathed in and out on that a little bit. Stretch took longer than I thought it was going to. It's a guideline. Just breathe as you need to, you know? Okay, enough about breathing. Let's talk about the story. So, with this story, just like every other story, it is brought together by the three elements within the creative mixing bowl, and the first one is, of course, the prompts. There we go. There's the prompts. So just take a second to give her a screenshot, and 3, 2, 1, back to the room. Okay. Awesome. So let us talk about some things inside those prompts. So the first thing is the ailment, shattered tooth. Now, shattered tooth sounds innocent enough, like it would be, oh, I don't know, you know, like a first level beginner's ailment. No. So this one is in the tier 3, right? There's 4 tiers, 1 being the easiest, 4th being the hardest. This is tier 3. And because we had done the intermediate, so level 2, Alicia and I have been working through the level 2s and getting bored with them, frankly. And so, yeah, so this one we kicked up into level 3 just to see what would happen. So shattered tooth, and you know, the ingredients are more complicated. There's 3 of them and they're higher power. So, you know, you need better reagents in order to handle stuff. Now, in the game, of course, you're encouraged to kind of go out and, you know, collect reagents. So in this particular case, we had everything that we needed in-house. So we could just make it right then and there. And that's what we decided to do. And okay, so yeah, so the real fun was figuring out who is ill and what does it mean. Now, the doctor had been mentioned in the past, and I thought, well, you know, this is an opportunity to start dealing with this again, right? 'Cause we have to bring the doctor in to talk about how the boss and him being a bad guy, right? That's a thread that's been established. And I think I'm going to end up, I'm bringing in what's been written before, but that's okay because it's all guidelines. So anyways, yeah, so it was just a wonderful opportunity to do that. So that's one thing. So with the prompts. The other thing is that we did decide to go to Glimmerwood Grove, and Alicia in particular had some desires to go there. So I was like, okay, great, you know, then Glimmerwood Grove will work for me. And what happens, you know, when you're pulling cards, and you know, maybe you shuffle them up and like you just pull one from the top. Well, that's not the way that Alicia pulls cards. She'll just, you know, shuffle and then like ask for a card to pop out, or she might just, you know, have one that she just kind of, you know, grabs mid-stack and then reveals it. It can change. In this particular instance, I don't remember exactly what happened, but 2 cards popped. So we had 2 prompts for Glimmerwood Grove, and they were both good, and so they both got used. And Yeah, so the first one was there's a wounded animal, and the details on this is it's like a wounded animal lying next to an oak tree and blah blah and blah 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 blah. And if you can heal the animal, you get benefit. Uh, so so we chose to do that, and so part of the draw there is that you have to pull a card, and you're looking on the familiars table to see what kind of animal it is, and ours came up as mythical, and I had a convenient mythical creature who I'd already written about, which is the Sphinx. So that was good. The other card that came out was the Noble Elf. All right, so we had been to the Noble Elf a couple episodes back. Mousei had gone there. He played his little verbal trickery on the elf, trading a tail for a tail, or a small piece of tail for a small piece of tail. And so yeah, Mousei handed over a few hairs from his tail in exchange for the story about Count von Rannoch that the Noble Elf gave. So the elf was, clearly less than impressed. So anyways, if you combine those up together, that's the last part of this episode, and I just thought it was just perfect. So do what you will with them, but that's what I did. Okay, so let's talk about what's been written before, and oh boy, is there a list. So a lot of things got pulled forward on this episode, and we're gonna actually be talking about that a little bit when we do the Panzer as well. So anyways, so the events of this episode flow from the prior episode as a continuation. So last episode ends in the middle of the night after having been out and about and doing a whole bunch of stuff. And Pop divides and becomes part of the broom, and from there she really becomes part of the broom. So that takes that. Another thing. So again, I referenced this already. So Mousei has already been to the Noble Elf's court, and while Sweet had a sense that Mousei might have been lying about how well or not it went, we have an opportunity to dig deeper into that mystery. And another thing we get to dig deeper on is the doctor, who was implicated by the mayor as wanting to kick Sweet out of her cottage and turn it into a health resort. So we have an opportunity to dive deeper into that one. So there's that. Something else that occurred in this episode, there was another breadcrumb that dropped regarding Sweets' true nature. Yeah, this one was how her burned skin turned the color of smooth tree bark. So see what happens there if anyone has yet figured out what is going on. Pop we have brought forward in the story with the melding of the broom, and this is something that is going to continue to be discussed. Of course, Pip wrote, so we had to have a reply that went back, and I guess that was more of a prompt from the outside coming in. But what the heck? This has happened enough times now that we can sort of anticipate that it's also like what's been written before, because there was some desire to communicate even before we had the note that popped in. And okay, so we've been to Pips's cottage briefly, and that was Pips's cottage during the mushroom trip. And so we got to see Birdie. So Birdie gets to be her lovely little self back in our world. And that was pretty well how Birdie gets written inside Alicia's stories. And so it's accurate. And the last is the Sphinx, who had never been mentioned aside from, being his on his little pedestal and his interactions with Sweet way back. It was Madcap Week, whenever that was. So the Sphinx has been shown to not be good at this riddle thing. If you remember, the riddle before was you're driving a cabbage wagon or a cabbage cart, and 13 cabbages are thrown into the wagon, and then some other and some other. And what's the name of the wagon driver? It's one of those old elementary school riddles. Like, you drive the bus. What's the name of the bus driver? I just love these little things that go in, mostly because I can't think of stuff in the moment, and I don't want to go and pull something out. Like, the Hobbit's got these really clever riddles in them, across in the what was it? Oh, when Bilbo and Gollum are negotiating for the ring, the precious. Yeah, so just like to have something a little bit simpler for me to use. I can write many things, but apparently riddles are not my forte. Okay, so that brings us to the imagination piece. And oh boy, did we have some bits and pieces here as well. So given that the prompts melded so nicely, plus we've run into the elf and the Sphinx before, it just made sense to have all of it come together, right? So it all kind of melds in, and it makes it just so much fun, right? Because you've got so many disparate things. If you can boil them together and turn it into a single thing, and it really adds this lovely richness and craziness, and just, I don't know, it's fun to find these intersections and then use that as like the single prompt going forward. Okay, so that's that. So Pop operates by feeding off of magical energies, and the broom has oodles of magical energy, so they become more than they were. And again, this is going to play deeper into further episodes. So I wanted to have some fun with the different approaches to medicine, with the doctor representing the more modern medical approach and Sweet taking the more natural and holistic approach. So Alicia and I are fans of the more holistic, natural approach. And so when I write things that are a little bit derogatory towards modern medicine, it's partly, what you're seeing is just my preference for the more holistic approach. Not that it always cures things, but in this magical world, in particular, where you can just make a potion and then you heal a tooth, where do you go wrong there? Anyway, I also wanted to play with the mayor equals bad guy thread. And so we're exploring that a little bit more, despite the fact that we're not involving the mayor and we're not revealing him to be, like more bad guy. We're just exploring sort of the undercurrent behind that thread and what all might be going on. Next bit is Mouse Eyes' story gets revealed as an exaggeration. Imagine that. Mouse Eye exaggerates. I mean, totally on brand, right? Do you think so? Really? Yes. Okay. And then lastly, I had an opportunity to play with a little bit of poetry, and so why not throw in a limerick, one that's definitely clean. And so in some segments of the limerick world, I would be viewed as not writing a proper limerick because it's not dirty or racy or whatever. But I liked mine, so there you go. That's my limerick. Okay, so that brings us to the pantser section. And today's pantser section, getting into the story's flow. So something Alicia and I found is that it can take a while before you have sufficient material written to delve into the storylines that are more complicated. The more you write, the more material you have to play with and bring forward into future episodes. So you may be thinking, okay, so you're on, you've written how many episodes now in this thing? And the answer is, I think this is number 18. So, and it's taken you this long to get into the story flow? And the answer is kind of, yeah. What we had been finding coming up to this particular episode, and further episodes are actually going to become even more in line with this, is that I was putting a lot of attention into the guidebook and the prompts, and then some attention into what's been written for, and some attention into the imagination. And you know, maybe it was like a third, something like that. And as we've been going along and writing and writing and writing, we're finding that the prompts are actually starting to a little bit get in the way. For instance, the wounded animal that we find turns out to be the Sphinx in my story, but the wounded animal, and it's supposed to be found next to, you know, an oak tree, and I think that was it, but it's lying next to an oak tree, which is a nice detail inside the prompt, but is it really necessary? No. So taking that out and sort of massaging the prompt to make it do what I wanted it to do, and it became one of these things. It was like that, I guess it was like that last little straw that just had me thinking, this is not working as well as I would have hoped. So dropping the importance of the prompts a bit and increasing the importance of what's been written before and the imagination. And more that is going to be coming into play until we get to the end of this thing. And so yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, kind of getting into the flow of it. And yeah, this is the 18th episode that I've written, and yeah, and it has taken me that long to sort of find my flow, find my style, find what it is that's working for me and what's not working for me, and where is my joy when I am using the guidebook and presenting this stuff. And yeah, so you know, guidebook less. Everything that I've created up. And so yeah, so that's how I'm getting more into the flow, finding what it is that actually works for me. And as I've alluded to in prior videos, and it's going to be talked about as we get closer and closer to the end of this thing, the guidebook does just sort of start to fall off. It's there, and it provides some guidance and support in a direction for the story to go, but it is less important than it had been. It's a less present in the creative mixing bowl than it has been in the past. So okay, so just going back to my notes here. So if you look at the numbers of things that brought forward in this episode, there's a lot. You can see just how fun and potentially crazy things can get with the story. And remember, you can drop threads, you can explain things away, you can bring in things that maybe weren't as well explained earlier as they could have been. You can do whatever you want, right? So there's all these little threads and things that you can always pick one up or two or three and, like, you know, grab them and weave them together and then put them out there. And also with working with just sort of getting into your flow, if two prompts happen to jump out of the deck of cards that you are using, go for it. Use them, both. Why not? We did, and it worked a real treat for us both. So the deeper you go into your writing process, the more you allow the magic that is the story itself to bloom. And then that really, I think, is an extremely important thing to keep in mind. The more that you try to wrangle and control the story and demand that, like, oh, I made this, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. The more you allow the story itself to develop and germinate and grow and bloom, I think the better the story is going to be. And at the very least, the more amazing it's going to be as you are sitting down and writing it down and going like, wow, hey, this is kind of cool. I never saw this one coming. It's one of those fun things that as you're writing, you get to experience things for the first time. And that's all within this realm of getting into the story's flow. So let's go over to the Drawing Expressions haiku. A creative space, holistically supportive. Please like, share, subscribe. Please. And with that, thank you so much for being a part of this journey, for listening to this episode, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for the next episode. Until then, bye for now.